You are the passengers on a most uncommon podcast about to ascend into your very own episode of Ride Rehab.
Welcome to Ride Rehab. I'm Tyler Mann.
And I'm Thomas Kiernan.
And I'm RobPlays.
And today's episode, we're recording from inside the fifth dimension, which is pretty much the only way we can word this. I mean, there's floating clocks and creepy baby dolls that are talking to us pretty much everywhere. I'm terrified, but at the same time, enchanted.
Everything here is so vague and nebulous, but I feel like I'm going to learn an important life lesson by the end of this episode.
And the way we got here was a little bit weird. You see, we had this hotel room we checked into at, I think it was called the Hollywood Tower Hotel, and somehow we ended up here. Rob, how did you get here?
Listen, I'm just glad somebody else is here, finally, because I've been here for weeks. I was writing a video. It was all about the Tower of Terror. I was a little too critical about it, and then before I know it, I, turn over my shoulder. I see this guy in a suit talking just off as if there was a camera there, and then I turn back, and, I'm here. And I've been here for weeks, and it's been, not gonna lie, kind of like torture.
I mean, it could be hours. Time works differently here. We don't is there an exit? I don't even know. Do we ever leave? Maybe we leave and we don't know if we've left even.
So they were just playing on loop the rebooted version of the Twilight Zone. I thought maybe my punishment was I had to sit through that through its entirety, but then it just looped around again. So I actually don't know how to get out of here.
Ew, wait, the Forrest Whitaker one? Or
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, that one's bad.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it 3 times now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, while we're here, and since we don't even know if there's a way out, we may as well talk about the Hollywood Tower Hotel, or as everyone else probably knows it, the Tower of Terror at Walt Disney World. Before we go on, a brief history of the Tower of Terror. In the late 1980s to early 90s, Disney was tossing around ideas for a new e-ticket attraction for Hollywood studios. It started out as a haunted house ride, it developed into a haunted hotel, and then eventually became the Hollywood Tower Hotel, featuring a theme of the Twilight Zone television series, which Disney licensed from CBS. The ride features Spanish colonial revival architecture, so that when it's viewed on the back of the Morocco skyline in Epcot, it would blend in. And did you know that? Did you know that's the top 10 things people didn't know? There's tunnels under the Magic Kingdom, and you can see Tower of Terror behind Morocco. Anyways, inside a dusty hotel lobby and a pre-show room, they tell the story of 5 people who disappeared in an elevator after it was struck by lightning one Halloween night in 1939. We're then told we would be the stars of our own episode of the Twilight Zone before the ride sends us up, across, and then down a haunted elevator shaft. Other versions of the ride or the ride system exist in California Adventure Park as Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, in Tokyo Disney Sea as the High Tower Hotel, and a duplicate version in Disney Studios Park in Paris. I think we should just start by saying this ride is really good. It's not like a ride that people have a problem with, like Journey into Imagination. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think there's stuff that could be improved upon or even completely changed.
I mean, if there's one thing I've learned on YouTube, it's that people really love this ride, and they don't like when you talk about getting rid of it or changing it, which is probably why I've learned to love talking about that very subject.
What I find most surprising is that everyone, when they announced that they were changing it to Guardians in California, the first reaction was, no, this is gonna suck! You're destroying this ride in my childhood! And then the ride came out, everyone's like, wow, that was great. And then the next Guardians thing gets announced, and everyone's like, oh no, it's gonna suck, Ellen's gone, and all this stuff. I find it bizarre that that's usually the reaction until they realize how much better the attraction gets when you finally revamp it or do something new with it.
Yeah, and especially with the California Adventure one, you saw so many people, and this is why I say everybody's got their own line in the sand with changing rides, but it's so generational because there were people when the Tower of Terror over there was announced that it was changing, were like, it's a classic, you can't change it. But there were also people who, from the era of when Disneyland opened in the 50s, who think it's laughable that anything in California Adventure should be considered a classic because it's so relatively new as a theme park. And so it just shows that it's for everybody, it's kind of a little different.
I mean, and the theme was California, a pretty loosely held theme that didn't last that long either.
Yeah.
Remember flying in a bee inside of an orange? Or remember that generic roller coaster? I mean, I personally, when I saw that they were changing it, I'm like, okay. I mean, show me what it's going to look like. And then you see the difference, and you're like, okay, this looks incredible. If that's the way the rest of the park is going, where they're going to revamp stuff that's super old or just like a carbon copy of something else, then yeah, it's probably going to be a lot better if they update it now.
Yeah, I lucked out, and my first trip to California Adventure was like 3 years ago, so I got like the revamped park. And now I kind of miss that I didn't get to see the I guess the mess of the original firsthand. It kind of kills me I never got to ride Superstar Limo.
I mean, I think we can all agree there's certain attractions where you're like, oh, this is so bad, I wish I could have gone on it. Like, we hear how Alien Encounter was just a mess, but all I can think is I'd give anything to ride that ride.
Yeah, especially Superstar Limo. That's like the Room or Plan 9 of outer space for rides. Like, it loops back around to where it's got to be so bad it's good again.
It just, I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the Defunct Land where you hear just the insane history of just why it got made and the what it turned into, and then just the fact that, I mean, it's become slightly better now. But anyways, let's get back to Tower of Terror. The ride is great, but there's stuff that, like you said, it, the whole idea of is stuff sacred. I mean, Tom said in one of our previous episodes, absolutely nothing is sacred.
I agree 100%. I've gotten flack for it, for saying stuff like that, but as long as what you're doing with it is a genuine attempt to make it better, I feel like nothing should be too sacred to touch. It wasn't meant to be a museum, you know?
Yeah, and people always say, oh, but I want a museum. And I go, no, because then nothing's ever going to be better. But
I mean, I want a museum too, but I want like a museum somewhere else. I always wish they built a museum for the parks, like in Disney Springs or something.
Well, every pavilion at Epcot could have a museum, but for some reason doesn't. So before we actually start changing anything, before we start rehabbing Tower of Terror to the fullest extent of just tearing it down completely and putting in something new, why does this ride work? Why is it good? And I think it's one of the most immersive attractions in terms of story and the idea of like a horror build-up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of that's a good summary of it. It's the buildup of the atmosphere, especially if we're talking, the Florida version. Everything about that whole experience, from the minute you not even get on the queue, right? Because it's as you're going into that little pathway that leads to the queue, you're sort of being placed into this other setting, and it carries on through the line outside, and then you get into the lobby, and it's even more so, and you've got that pre-show, and then you're in the basement. It's just like, I think it is exactly what people think about when they think about a Disney ride in terms of immersing you and putting you in a whole other world. It does that from the very beginning to the very end, and it does it really well too. It didn't feel like they ever skimped out on any of the details or the ride itself or the budget or anything.
Oh yeah, and somebody could, like Tom, for example, is not a drop person, never experienced the ride, but that queue is pretty much enough of an attraction, like a walkthrough attraction, right?
The theming is beautiful. It's clear every painstaking detail was put into this. But when I thought about it a bit more, while the theming fits the ride doesn't fit the theming. When you think about the Twilight Zone, you think about these episodic stories, and the stories tend to be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Introspective and weird. This, while arguably you could say there could be a Twilight Zone episode like this, it doesn't feel like an episode of the Twilight Zone. It feels like a Twilight Zone themed ride, rather. That's the only other thing I have to say about the theming. Obviously, I can't speak for the actual experience of being on the ride. But I did thoroughly enjoy walking through the queue line and seeing all the fine, minute details of the theming.
We are like 100% on the same wavelength.
Oh, thank goodness.
No joke. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, not to plug my own channel, but I made a video. It was an op-ed where it was called essentially the Twilight Zone is a great ride, but it's an awful Twilight Zone ride, because I don't feel like the Twilight Zone theming itself sort of captures the spirit of the show and what the show is sort of meant to represent. And I think part of that ties into the history of the attraction, right? I think the way you put it was it's sort of like it's got a Twilight Zone. It's almost like it's a skin of the Twilight Zone thrown over the ride, which is essentially what it kind of was, right? Like, it was originally planned as this Mel Brooks attraction. It was supposed to be sort of this funny haunted hotel style thing, and it was only late in the game that they added Twilight Zone IP, and I just don't think it carries the spirit of the show very well, which is why I was excited to be on this show and talk about this ride, because I'm totally supportive of, at the very least, just stripping it of the Twilight Zone IP, or at the most redoing the entire story and concept.
This is blasphemy, taking away the Twilight Zone theme.
Well, I like the Twilight Zone theme, and it's nice to see theming for a property that has existed before a lot of the more recent IPs, and certainly something that's not specifically related to Disney in the Hollywood studios. It's one of the few remaining rides, I think at least, that retains a theming of a property that does not belong to Disney anymore. Yeah. Because now, obviously, Disney has bought the Lucasfilm rights, so things like the Indiana Jones stunt show and Star Tours are now theirs. And so it's kind of nice to see this older era of Hollywood, because I think the Twilight Zone, regardless of the quality of the show and regardless of the quality of the theming, we get to see that old Hollywood style in the ride.
That was the thing I didn't think about until we were watching Twilight Zone again today. We were watching the series from sort of beginning to end, starting with the original season 1, is that this is a ride of the Twilight Zone. That concept sounds amazing when you think about it. I didn't actually I go on something like Star Tours and I'm like, oh, it's a Star Wars ride. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then I go on this and it hasn't even occurred to me the idea that they took a television series like Twilight Zone and made a theme park attraction out of it. Thinking about that now, it's just such an absurd concept. If you had said any other television series, it wouldn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. But somehow that one works just because of the anthology feel of it, where it could be anything.
Yes, and I think I'm not going to backtrack my statement. I do still think that the ride doesn't quite capture the nature of the show, but the nature of the show fits the ride quite nicely, where the weirdness of it and the oddities which occur within the Twilight Zone sort of fit within this framework that they have built the ride upon.
I think everyone might agree with me here. It fits the nostalgia of the show more than the actual spirit of it. Because, for example, we're watching the episodes, and a lot of them don't end with a scary twist or anything. They actually end in a pretty nice way. Only 1 in every 6 of them, maybe someone's already dead, or they're actually in hell. But they're just meant to be kind of science fiction-y, kind of fantasy stories. So the idea of being in this haunted hotel that got struck by lightning and stuff, it kind of fits with that, especially when you have that Twilight Zone episode that plays. It's just all the more convincing. That episode in the library that you watch.
I think what they would need to do in order to improve the current theming would be to flesh out the story a little more. When you told me there was a Twilight Zone episode thing, and they have the CGI Rod Serling come out and tell us about it.
Rod Serling.
I guess it's real Rod Serling, but they had voiceover manipulation and stuff and whatever. I pictured something like he talks about how you're the stars of this episode and such, but I imagined more detail on the people who vanished on the elevator. And yes, I know they made that made-for-TV movie starring
Steve Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst.
That's right, Kirsten Dunst.
Which I just watched last week, by the way. It did not age very well at all.
No,
I think it's held up, but no, it does not age well.
No. I think the story, it feels kind of Twilight Zone-y, but it's too saccharine to be Twilight Zone-y. There wasn't enough. Well, because here's the thing. The Twilight Zone has a lot of more positive episodes, but there's always those those moments where we have a little bit of fear for the character. And it feels a little too 90s to be the Twilight Zone as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Rod Serling would be like, the bellhop, Johnny Matheson, aged 14. His wife, and he would go through all those things, just little touches that would make it just a little bit more like a Twilight Zone episode, or and there's no like Twilight Zone-esque. I'm gonna, for lack of a better term, there's no Twilight Zone-esque twist ending to the ride. It's just you drop down and now you're in the Twilight Zone, or you were in the Twilight Zone, or something happened. You dropped in an elevator.
That's true. That makes me sort of question where, because we clearly go up to the top floor, and then we move through the fifth dimension, and then he says, you're about to experience what lies beyond the deepest, darkest corner of your imagination, in the Tower of Terror. And then we do this drop sequence, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
And then we just end up back in like the basement.
Well,
it's never very clear what happened to us.
The story kind of ends after you've been brought up to the top, because from there they could have been like, the ghosts of these people are messing with the thing, and on the anniversary of their death, the elevator drops, and give it more of a story rather than just say the Twilight Zone and have Twilight Zone style narration going. It could have more story, and I think that would give a stronger feel of the show as opposed to just the theming of it, just a skin, as Rob said earlier.
And I think Mission Breakout proves that it is possible to take the same exact format of the Tower of Terror and expand on the story, because what I think that ride does really well that Tower of Terror doesn't utilize, which I think is also, it's just a product of the era that the ride's supposed to be set in, is that it uses a little bit of the queue outside and the lobby to help tell the story by having, you know, this screen with the collectors kind of explaining who he is and where you are and help establish all of that. So by the time you get into the little pre-show room, you've actually already started to experience the story of it. And with the Tower of Terror, you don't have that as much. You're still getting established with the setting, obviously, by your surroundings. But if there were a way to work in storytelling in the lobby itself, whether through like screens or, you know, a big TV set, or go so as far as to say animatronics or something, then it just, you know, expands so much your ability to tell a story. And then on the flip side, if you like reduce the scope of the story, so maybe it's not 5 whole people getting in that elevator, maybe it's 1, and then you only have to tell that one person's story. It gives you that much space to kind of mold it into the Twilight Zone.
Like Hightower Hotel, specifically, where it's Joe Rohde as Harrison Hightower, and we hear his one story, which is he puts a cigarette out on an ancient tiki statue, which curses the elevator, and then it's trying to curse us because we're getting back on the same elevator. That is focusing on one story. And we have a lot to learn when we go into Mission Breakout, because they have to explain to us, 1, who the Collector is, 2, who the Guardians are, and 3, what they're trying to do to get out. That one has a beginning, a middle, and an end in such a short amount of time as well.
I was going to say, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror has a beginning, kind of a middle, but no end. Or rather, the end is just more narration.
I mean, I think it has the potential to be, like, my stance has been for a while now, and it still is, that I don't think it's a good Twilight Zone ride. I think it's a great ride. I think it has the potential to be a great Twilight Zone ride. They just need to rewrite it, and they just have to take the spirit. And I always thought, like you said, there are so many episodes of that show that aren't just about sudden twist and all along they were dead or anything like that. But in the episodes where it's not, it's at the very least a good character piece that's supposed to tell us a little bit about human nature. And I don't think the ride does that even. And I think it could easily do so. And you could even keep that property. And you know, I don't know, maybe, I don't know how the logistics of rides, but if there's a way to like make the pre-show like 30 seconds longer, how much more of an ability does that give you to tell a story there?
Like how Rocket is in there to explain it to us rather than Rod Serling. Like there's more opportunity for something in that pre-show space. Like it's a small space in comparison to, like, for example, like Stitch's Great Escape, where we have 2 different pre-show rooms, for example, and an animatronic in one of them, like how Rocket is an animatronic, and that's also in such a tiny, tiny space too.
Okay, well then let's begin the rehab portion of this show. Let's actually think of some ways that we can actually improve the ride, the way that we can improve the theming it currently has, and sort of find ways to tell a story more akin to what we know in the Twilight Zone. So the basic premise of the ride, as I understand it, is that 5 people vanish on an elevator, and then we go on the same elevator, and then it drops, and it's scary.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's the thing.
So how do we Twilight Zone this up a bit and make it say a little something about humanity, or at least have a bit more plot to it?
So I was actually thinking about this a couple of weeks ago when I was making that video, and I tried to think how would I make it a Twilight Zone episode. And for me, what I would love to see is a story that focuses on the elevator guy, the bellhop, and the monotony of what that day-to-day job is like. And I could just picture this story about somebody who has this boring job who is craving something more exciting, and then they eventually get that excitement that they crave in the form of the elevator snapping and dropping, and it becomes this sort of be careful what you wish for tale where, he ended up getting exactly what he wanted, but in the worst way possible, and you're kind of along for that ride, and in that way it sort of becomes like I guess maybe a parable about being, I don't know, be careful what you wish for. Yeah, I guess it would be the way to put it.
Well, I was going to say that actually sounds very Twilight Zone. Even if it's not quite. Usually, Twilight Zone, good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. So we'd have to establish this character a little bit more. Is he like a bellhop who thieves from people's luggage while he takes it up, or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's his thrill.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Something like that, maybe. He steals something from someone. Maybe we tie it into the Disney Tokyo one.
Oh yeah,
with Harrison Hightower together. He steals the idol from Harrison Hightower, and then while he's in the elevator, something happens and it causes the elevator to collapse and such, or something like that. Because that could also be a neat little reference to the one in Tokyo without directly ripping it off, or without doing the same thing. I like this idea.
Especially if the idol has this backstory of it gives you whatever your deepest desire is, and his desire is an exciting life, and it gives that to him just in almost what is that movie I'm thinking of with Brendan Fraser where the devil he gets wishes
Bedazzled.
from the devil. Bedazzled, yeah. And it's every time he wishes for something he kind of gets what he wants, but it's always in the worst way possible, and he regrets it, something like that.
Right before the elevator drops, we see the bellhop, and he goes, I wish this boring life would end, and then the cable snaps and we drop. And that's a little touch of comedy that was also in the Twilight Zone, but also kind of still pretty dark. I guess arguably though, then we have the problem of Disney's we don't want kids to be afraid.
Let me jump in there, because you can sort of add on to that to be as you're falling and rising and stuff, you sort of hear his ghostly echoes, and then he could redeem himself, or sorry, the bellhop, whoever they may be, they could redeem themselves by being I've got to put the idol back, and then he puts it back, and then suddenly we're at the bottom, and he's oh, I'm here. We're all here together. What year is it?
I mean, I guess then the other thing is because we always have this recurring character of the devil in the Twilight Zone, or a devil-like figure. He shows up and he's enigmatic and offers the protagonist a deal or something, and then the protagonist takes it and things go wrong. In this case, I guess we could have the bellhop's soul becomes trapped in the elevator, and us going up and down is him constantly reliving the elevator dropping. He's trapped in this. His spirit is trapped in this hotel or something like that, and
can we just nail down that we should cast Brendan Fraser in this version?
I was just thinking that.
That would be
How
wonderful.
Are we going to sell Brendan Fraser plushes in the gift shop, though? Or no, I guess you'd sell the idol itself.
As a plush,
I wasn't sure if make him the devil character or make him the bellhop, or both.
Both.
Get him in
That would be wonderful.
No, just you just got Elizabeth Hurley to be the devil again. It's a sequel to Bedazzled.
Let's just get rid of the Twilight Zone. Let's just make
we're gonna make
Bedazzled
it
drop
Bedazzled.
right.
Everyone's favorite Disney movie, Bedazzled. the very famous movie. What was I going to say? I was going to go take it a little back to the queue line. In Journey into Imagination, the current one, or rather, I guess it is still the current one because there's no new one. It's going to be torn down, but regardless, the point I'm trying to reach is that they have the office stores that you pass by, and then you can hear voices or you can see things happening behind them. Do something like that with Tower of Terror, where when you're in a certain part of the queue, you can hear behind the door "Man, have you heard? Another guest's valuables have gone missing. They think it's someone at the hotel, but they can't figure out who. We better watch out, something, something, something. Oh, and did you also see that strange man? Oh, yes, Harrison Hightower, blah, 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 blah." And it sort of gives exposition like that. And it's just a recording that you play every 10 or 20 minutes or so, depending on how long the line is. And just little things like that.
I think that's the right path. I think that's the right path to go down, and I think there's a great technology that helps with that. It brings you even to the next step beyond just a voice behind the door, but I'm thinking of the pre-show to Rock and Roller Coaster, where you have the screen where it's telling a story through film, but it's made to look like a window. And if you can work something like that, and maybe not as crystal clear as their actors and it's supposed to be you're looking through a window, but if it's the silhouette of actors moving behind the sandblasted glass, so you can see that somebody's behind there talking, and make it sort of this seamless loop, then that totally gives you so much extra space to tell stories.
And another change we could make to the narrative is that instead of Rod Serling being "You are the stars of this episode," he could instead be "You are the new employees at this." What do you call it?
Why are we on this elevator?
Exactly. Why are we on this elevator? Because you are the new employees, and you're the new bellhops, and you've been asked to be shown the ropes of this. And then it turns out, oh no, there's a bellhop spirit trapped by the ghost, and things are happening.
And I think if you go with that narrative of the spirits in the elevator itself, it also justifies why your entire walk up towards the attraction, you're seeing the elevator continuously dropping. And that's one of those things with certain attractions that I've always noticed, especially Dinosaur, for instance, is how there is a narrative with the beginning, a middle, and end, but you have to sort of ignore the fact that you can see people getting on the ride as you're getting off, or people getting on the ride before you, and you try to just imagine that you're the only ones doing this. But with this sort of plot line where the spirit's always in this elevator going up and down, it kind of explains why all these other people are experiencing the same thing, because it's sort of this perpetual problem that's going on in the hotel.
Yeah.
That was something certain attractions do well. Flight of Passage is obviously Alpha Centauri Expeditions is letting us do this, and it's sort of like a tour kind of thing, or Star Tours. It's sort of like an interplanetary sort of touring company. That's why there's so many of us in the queue line. And that makes sense. But then it's is Dr. Seeker controlling all of the time rovers in Dinosaur? Every single one, or is it conveniently ours?
I was going to say, the other thing that was kind of lost on me at the first walkthrough was the idea that I think this hotel is supposed to be abandoned and closed. Because we have all these old things lying around, and they're covered with a layer of dust.
We don't spend enough time in the lobby.
Yes. You say we don't spend enough time. I think we're not told enough about it. I think from the details, those of us who are smarter can pull out the details and be oh, this hotel is haunted, and it's been out of use for many, many years, and that's why there's a thick layer of dust on everything. And these cast members are the ghosts who are still trapped in this place, or something like that. And then that feels very like a Twilight Zone episode. Someone enters a supposedly abandoned hotel, and then everything in there is functioning. That was the plot of the TV movie, wasn't it?
Which one?
The TV movie of the Tower of Terror with Kirsten Dunst, the one we were just talking about.
Well, there's the famous actress lady who shows up as sort of like a human, but she really is one of the sort of the ghost spirits that's
right. Yes.
Or whatever. But no, everyone else there, that's the only character they interact with. Mm-hmm. Miss Poulet is what she called herself.
Yep.
And everyone else, though, it isn't until they start interacting with the bellhop character that they sort of realize that they're sort of stuck there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was I going to say? Is that I would love the queue. If we're keeping sort of that Twilight Zone theme, expand on it, I'd expand the lobby and maybe walk through a different part of the hotel. I don't know how much. I've seen layouts of the attraction. I don't know how much room there is beyond that lobby and then sort of the loading area and the two pre-show rooms, because they're all sort of on the same floor, and they take up a lot more room than we think because of how it's sort of laid out. We don't know that we're not walking downstairs into the boiler room. It's all on one level, but I wonder if there's room to expand on the lobby or add like a little ballroom area. I know it's the Tip Top Club is on the top level in the TV movie, but it would be great to walk through an abandoned ballroom where you can see like fancy stuff that's even more destroyed or like tattered and so on. Do
you know what I would love? Would be some hints as to what's happening. Some Haunted Mansion style ghosts where it's like a Pepper's ghost illusion and we see them just for a brief instant in the queue line and then we're like, did we see that?
Like,
was that a real thing that we just saw? Yeah. That would be kind of neat. A little spookier, I think a little bit of spook goes a long way. Wow.
Absolutely. I think, you know what else you could do? It's just, it's funny, I'm looking right now at a top-down layout of the building itself, and if you really you don't even have to go as far as to find other space to expand that. You could just, if they built like a room where, that part where the fountain is now and you kind of make a right and you go around, and if they turned that into an internal part of the queue and made that the lobby, and then the lobby like some other part of the hotel, like maybe the study or the library, something like that, then you get all that extra room to like pack in all this detail or screens or animatronics or whatever, and then you're not even making the queue any longer or shorter, you're just sort of converting a bit of it over and keep that same footprint.
I think it's interesting that building, like there's certain rides where we only see like maybe one or two sides of the building, or in the case of like Haunted Mansion, we don't even see the actual show building. But Tower of Terror, it wraps all the way around. Like every single part of that building is viewable from every angle. So if you add something onto it, or if you add like an adjacent room, yeah, you're right, like it could totally be in the fountain area. It just has to fit thematically, like maybe like a greenhouse or like a sitting room sort of thing where you can still keep it windowed so people can see outside or something like that. But yeah, that would be a great idea to add it onto that queue and make it longer, because it's also outside, and sometimes those trees do not block all the sunlight, and that gets really hot in the summertime.
Good point.
Well, I think we've talked sufficiently about the ride in its current state and how to improve it. So let's move on to the next darker part of our podcast. Let's talk about what would we do if we had to re-theme the Tower of Terror, or what we think could go in place there, or even just tearing it down and replacing it entirely.
Mission Breakout 2. Save all your hate tweets. But I think Mission Breakout 2 would be great. No, that's only a half joke.
I want it, though. I want that, but I understand that the ride system is not the same. And it wouldn't be, like, I think it's because of the horizontal movement. It doesn't exist in the California version. Let me get all weird and technical for just a moment here. So in California, you sort of have two drop shafts. There's two different loading areas, though. One on the top floor, one on a floor right underneath it. So one car could always be in the drop shaft and on the ride while the other car is loading. But in the Florida version, we have 4 drop shafts that connect to 2 individual ones for the actual drop sequence. But those 4, one of them is always going up to the top floor, the other one is loading, and then there's always the bottom level that's unloading. So it's a lot more complicated of a system where you can't have that sort of continuous momentum that Mission Breakout does, where it's constantly moving up and down as much as it wants to, because eventually it's going to need to reach the top of that tower and move horizontally into the drop shaft. Unless you move the whole, when Rocket unplugs you bit from the beginning of the ride, put that in the top, like right before you go into the drop shaft. That way the drop shaft can last as long as it needs to. But you're not really going to have like those video screens there, I don't think. Like you're not going to be able to see sort of inside those little monster areas or that main chasm that we see that the Guardians are trapped in. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's going to be as rollicking of a good time.
That leads me to a question. When you're dropping, you know how there's the fake out ending, right? And then you go back up, it's like starts to play a video, and then it actually, it's like it starts to play that end video, but then it's not the end, and then you go back up, and then you start dropping again with Tower of Terror. Is that the bottom? Is that the same screen at the actual end, or is that a second screen halfway down?
What did you mean by the fake out? I don't think I know what you're referring to.
There are a few times on the Florida version where when you get towards the bottom, you see like the spiral of the ending of the Twilight Zone, and it looks like you're about to get the end video when you're done with the ride, but you don't actually stop dropping. You then go back up again, and then there's some more drops. And so it's like a bit of a fake out if you know that movie typically signifies the end of the ride. And then when it actually ends, it just stops, and then you get the playback of the sort of Twilight Zone outro. And I wasn't sure if they were the same screen or different screens.
That's got to be the same one, because I don't know of any other video screens that are in the rest of the ride. I know that they used to have some kind of thing where they would project like lights or some kind of imagery in the actual shaft itself. That was like during a certain time. I think it was like Nightastic or whatever the heck that was called, where they changed that ride briefly just to have a little bit more effects in the shaft. But yeah, I think that's the same video screen then, because I don't know of any other ones.
Ah, gotcha. Well, then that wouldn't work as much.
Yeah. I mean, you could still have the whole... I don't think there... I mean, you could probably go up and down in the same first shaft that you start out in, but the best part is when it goes up and down constantly, as if, like, from the California version. But, I mean, this is infinite time, infinite money here. We could just revamp the whole ride system. Imagine if you when you get to the Fifth Dimension bit, if it moved the way a trackless ride vehicle does, like the new Ratatouille attraction. I know they're already trackless elevators, but I think we can do so much more with that now, because it's essentially just sitting in like a little conveyor belt thing there, or a little elevator that puts you up to the right floor. That vehicle can do whatever it wants once it gets out. If it spun backwards, that would be amazing, and then you could do the drop shaft bit and have video screens on the opposite side of the drop shaft.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be great. And I think that's a great opportunity to use that for as much. I love the ride, but that space when you're going through the Fifth Dimension, I feel like could be used so well if there's more of a coherent story during that part. Because right now it's just sort of like these sort of just random images that are associated to Twilight Zone with like the eye and the doors, stuff like that. But imagine if you like had a full set with animatronics in those spaces that was telling the story, you know?
And projection mapping technology, like that whole area could be updated in such a crazy way. Maybe you see the fit, like, you know that new effect that you see in the new Pirates where you see a skeleton and then you turn the corner and then it turns into Jack Sparrow? I think that's like a Pepper's Ghost effect. But you could do stuff like that where you see them turn into skeletons and then fall to dust on the ground, like something even more horrifying.
Here's my take on this. I love Mission Breakout, but I feel like there's an even better Marvel property that would have worked for this ride system.
Oh no.
And that's Doctor Strange. Have you guys seen Doctor Strange?
Yes.
Yeah, and I hadn't even thought about that.
It took me a moment, but I was like, you know what? Because the visuals in Doctor Strange are all those like weird building morphing things. Yeah, that would actually fit quite nicely.
Yeah, it's like the fractals and the whole Inception style playing with perspective and with what's up, what's down, gravity. I think it would give a narrative justification for when you start dropping and going back up again, is the idea of they're just playing with the concept of what is up and what's down at that point. And then, you just turn that building into the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. You can still maintain that sort of old school architecture because they're not necessarily new buildings in the world of that movie. And then, it's a character, I guess, not everybody's familiar with, but enough that I would hopefully it would work. And it's just a character that's naturally driven to conflict, so there's just like some fight going on, and you're kind of caught in the middle of it. And it's Marvel, so I could actually see Bob Iger like greenlighting something like that rather than an original ride, which he hasn't in a while.
That's pretty good. I can actually like picture that a little bit in my head. I always, whenever I had a little trouble thinking of something to that, or some theming that would replace the Twilight Zone, and then I remembered that there's always one default that I can always fall back on, and it will always ring true because it's the shallowest, most superficial thing, and it will always make money. which is Star Wars.
I was thinking about that because of the projections they did on Galactic Nights.
Well, I was going to say, what you do is you just take it and you make it Star Wars themed. The story doesn't matter. The theming can be weaker. It won't matter because it's Star Wars, and people love Star Wars. But we're going to pretend that Disney's would put effort into that. Well, that's not fair. I assume they would put effort into that. But we're going to imagine that it was made. I'm trying to think of a story. I guess you could just be in like a shuttlecraft of some kind, and then you're on the oh no, but they escape through a big hole in the back. Never mind. I was going to say we do in The Last Jedi. Spoilers. They escape on Crate. And they're in a mine, so you could have like a mine shaft that you're going through.
Well, Tom, the spice mines.
The spice mines.
Spice mines.
Oh, that's right.
Of Kessel. It could be. That was we peaked. Whatever. That was the thing, is that Guardians paved the idea that it doesn't have to be an elevator. In that case, it was a gantry lift. And so once you think of that, where it's like it doesn't need to be a hotel, it doesn't even need to be an elevator itself, it just needs to be a thing that can move up and down for something. I have a ton of ideas. I'm going to spout them off all randomly in a minute. But that being Star Wars, you could sort of be in any Rebel base or any Imperial or First Order base.
You could be on the Death Star as it's being blown up, and the I almost said the turbo lift.
It could be like a transport ship or a transport building, and the pre-show room is like what they want to do with the Star Wars elevator the Star Wars hotel elevator, where it's like it might just be a room that stays still, like the stretching room. We feel like we're going down, and I know in some cases of Haunted Mansion you're actually going down, but you could go into the pre-show room. And that takes us up to the Death Star. You put like projections on the screen, or on the screen. Well, that's where projections go. You put projections on the ceiling and on the walls. We feel like we're going up, and then we board sort of like this lift or this gantry lift or some kind of like whatever vehicle.
Something.
And that takes us through the Death Star. I guess there's elevators on the Death Star.
I would assume so. Yes, there are. I was about to say, I don't remember seeing them, but now I do, because in A New Hope we see, what's his name? Han, Chewie, and Luke dressed as stormtroopers in the elevator, going somewhere. And it's very brief, but they do have elevators. We know this.
That'd be great if it was themed to A New Hope.
What if you go in the opposite direction and make it super lazy Star Wars, and it's just like a galactic hotel where the elevators get struck by like space lightning?
Hi, I'm B. Arthur. Welcome to my hotel.
Welcome to my. That would be wonderful. I would go on B. Arthur's Terror Hotel.
I'd go on a Star Wars holiday special.
Do you know how much? Do you know how much I would pay to see an animatronic Harvey Korman that B. Arthur pours a drink into his head? That would be incredible.
And then it gets to the end of the fifth dimension, and she's like, the Empire is shutting us down! And as she says down, it drops.
I love it.
Oh
I love
God.
it. It's so terrible that I love it.
Oh my God.
It's like Superstar Limo. Goes right back around again.
That's right.
I'd go on a Star Wars. I mean, if that's the case, that's something we haven't talked about. If it's Marvel, and we're going to change it to be Marvel, is that whole street also going to be replaced by Marvel?
Yes.
Like Sunset Boulevard has to be Marvel Land, like the California park is already going to change to Marvel Land.
It's like they say, or not like they say. It's like I said in a previous conversation that we've had, is that they can change the rides as much as they like, but then they can always leave the theming outside the same. Because it's always the argument, it's a studio. You're not actually not actually in the movie. And they do the finger quotes. You're in the movie.
Yeah.
Get it? And so that could be the fallback. I mean, that's
I think
all, really.
Here's the thing. I want to throw this out here. because I feel like if it ends up coming true, then I get to go back like years later and go, look, I was I predicted it. I'm like Nostradamus. And if I'm wrong, we can all ignore that I ever said anything like this. But I predict that once the Fox deal closes and they have all that new IP and they've got all that secured, I suspect they're going to try and start to talk to Universal to get those ride rights sorted out so that they can eventually turn that whole area into Marvel Land. I think all the other Marvel lands we're seeing is them dipping their toes into the water and getting everything sorted so that once they have the rights in Florida, they can just throw their Marvel Land right down Sunset Boulevard.
I was going to say that's. I was going to say then they could turn it into like a Spider-Man ride. I can picture that where you're dropping because Spider-Man keeps webbing the thing you're trapped in. Yeah, kind of like in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where he has to choose between Mary Jane and the kids in the tram car. Except we're the kids in the tram car, and it's the new Tom Holland Spider-Man as opposed to Tobey Maguire. Although I would love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man in that the Green Goblin busts through the wall. Finish it.
Oh, you think people are going to really go to your Universal parks when we have Marvel everywhere else?
Is your
you will give in to us one day.
Is your name synonymous with childhood? No, I didn't think so. So we're going to take those superheroes and we're going to do whatever we want with them. We're going to throw them all over like a Jackson Pollock painting. We're just going to dip our brush in the paint and just fling it at the parks and see what looks good.
Well, I have a bunch of stuff. I have a bunch of things that I want to throw out because they're just ridiculous ideas and they don't hold a lot of water. But here we go. So I was thinking, what other movies that is owned by like Touchstone or whatever? What else does Disney have that is hotel based? And do you guys remember the movie Four Rooms starring Tim Roth, who works at a hotel by himself?
Yes.
That's
yeah.
Can you imagine just Tim Roth is like, we're going to go up to this room. And then suddenly he's like, oh no, the elevator's dropping. And then I just picture like a projection of him like falling up and down. And he's like, I'm holding on or something ridiculous.
I was going to say we have little cameos from all the different characters we meet. Like the reason the elevator drops is because
the witches?
I was going to say because Quentin Tarantino cuts the thing because at the end of that he cuts his
he has the cleaver.
Tim Roth cuts some guy's hand off,
but he has the cleaver.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the bride from Kill Bill because Quentin Tarantino directed that as well.
No.
Since we have that lovely new narration from Kevin Brighting, who does the voice in Stanley Parable, what if there was a Stanley Parable ride where every time you ride it, it's a different ending? Like, something different happens every time you go on it. Like, you go up the elevator, and then it's like, well, this isn't where the story is. Let's just try and follow this line. And then the doors open, and you move forward, but you're following that, like, adventure line.
Ah, okay.
And then you can have, like, a confusing ending where the ride just doesn't end or something. Or you just hear, like, the narrator, like, saying stuff. Or, like, the exit is, like, the museum. I could just hire Kevin Brighting. He could just voice this whole thing right now, for example.
I was going to say we have Kevin Brighting do the Rod Serling voiceover.
No.
We can't have star power in the show. We have a budget we need to work under. That's what they said when they were making the Twilight Zone. We can't hire that star. We have a budget.
I just love the idea that Disney's foray into video game attractions would be the Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
Like, it would oddly be perfect for Disney. Like, Universal's getting Nintendo and Mario, and
they're
Disney's like Stanley Parable.
The Stanley Parable? I don't think Davey Reardon would allow that. But that's a conversation for a different podcast.
Let me just throw this one out there. Evil Dead. Because you mentioned Sam Raimi.
Oh.
I would love an Evil Dead attraction. Especially if it is a horror drop ride themed.
Well, I was going to also say, well, we want to keep it horror themed because the idea of falling is very scary to a lot of people, and so a horror theme suits very well. And I thought, what about Black Mirror? Because that's the Twilight Zone for the digital age, quote unquote. And then I was like, oh, but wait, that show gets really dark.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's that?
You'd have to craft that story so that technology was the real reason it fell.
Exactly, right. the AI who controls the elevator gained sentience or something and hates you now or something.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
2001: A Space Odyssey. You're at the end. That's what the elevator dropping is. You're at the end of 2001. That's a bit far fetched, but I don't remember where I was going with Black Mirror. Oh, it's too frightening for children. Like I picture the Q area would be the Black Museum episode where it's like all the different things from the episode. But yeah, it's too frightening for children, and that would be the same with The Evil Dead. I know there are parents out there who would jump at the chance to take their kid on a splatter zone ride, Evil Dead style thing.
Let's splash people with another type of fluid. Just bear with me while I say this. Ghostbusters. Because that movie had a hotel.
The Sedgwick Hotel.
That was haunted with ghosts.
And it's one of the more iconic parts of that movie.
Because Slimer was in it.
Yeah. And they could test their CGI Harold Ramis technology.
Oh, no. This would be the new Ghostbusters.
Oh, well, then you've lost me. You've lost me entirely.
Or what if you cycle it? You pull at Star Tours and you don't know what you're going to get when you ride it.
Well,
Well, we've talked before about how randomization should be in almost every attraction, so that you can go on more than once.
Not every attraction.
Oh, you could have like Extreme Ghostbusters as well.
Extreme
Ghostbusters. Every time you ride.
The 90s animated series Extreme Ghostbusters. Everyone's going to remember that, Tyler.
Or the one with
Especially
the
all
monkey.
those kids born 4 years ago.
That 1970s one with the monkey that no one remembers.
Oh, yeah, that was just called The Ghostbusters or something like that. That would be terrible.
Anyways, I've exhausted all my crazy ideas.
Okay.
But I would absolutely love a proper Ghostbusters ride.
A proper Ghostbusters ride, I think, would be nice. I think part of that is the problem is that when you go on a ghost, I guess in Star Tours they don't give you a lightsaber, but you're in a ship. There's something about when people you know what, you're right. Ghostbusters would just fit. We would just be in the Sedgwick Hotel, and I don't know, the Ghostbusters accidentally shoot the thing with the proton packs. I think that would be the best way to do that.
And then
the
Zool
ghost
shows up at the end.
And Zool?
And then we get
Well, they're not. That's not the hotel. That's the apartment.
Oh yeah, but that's what people remember.
I guess you could have that. You could have these things because people remember them.
You've got that fifth dimension. You throw in like some really like Avatar, Navi River Journey level animatronic of the Ghostbusters just fighting ghosts in the hotel hallway.
Oh, I can picture like some special effect where they actually get like a 3D proton stream going out. That would be so cool to see.
You could do that. They've done actual lightning and electricity effects on rides before, like Journey to the Center of the Earth. I mean, obviously you're like behind a fence, but they actually have like a live sort of Tesla coil that they can zap on cue.
Gotcha. I was confused. I didn't realize there actually was a Journey to the Center of the Earth ride.
Yeah, Tokyo Disney Sea.
Okay.
Rob?
I just want to throw this one bit in here. Obviously, the most important part of this Ghostbuster idea is that the post-show gift shop, you could sell, your proton packs, your jumpsuits.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
could get photos where you're turned into a Ghostbuster, or you can get your own Slimer that you put on your shoulder and you press the little button and he moves or something.
like
it's going to make millions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you can always just promise a Ghostbusters bar and never deliver it.
And I was going to say the other thing is that I guess Ghostbusters is a movie that is old enough now that it's kind of become a staple of American cinema, and so it sort of fits in Hollywood. The thing about obviously Star Wars is a big important franchise, but the thing is the new films are still new things. They're not changing the way we see movies. They're not revolutionary. So the idea that they're tied to this Hollywood theme falls kind of flat when we have the new stuff incorporated in, which we have to because that's the stuff that we have to sell, or rather Disney has to sell. I think we're onto something here with Ghostbusters. I mean, it would mean that I
think we were onto something with Bedazzled.
I think we were. You know what? Let's go back to Bedazzled. All right, the ride starts, and Brendan Fraser. It's like the Mummy ride. Oh no, because the Mummy.
Are you actually going to describe the whole thing right now?
Yeah, sure. Why not? So you go through the queue area, and the queue area is the I think it's like a club. The Hell is a club or something. I can't remember this movie very precisely.
Does any Disney ride reference Hell? Oh, Mr. Toad.
Yeah.
Oh, but that one's gone.
No, it's still there.
It's still there?
Is it?
West Coast.
Yeah.
It's in Disneyland, not Disney World.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, I was about to say. All right, sure. But regardless, we're in Party Hell or whatever it was in Bedazzled. I don't remember. I was about 12 when I saw that movie. But we go through the queue area is hell, and you're going through, and we're like, wow, look at this. And then you enter, and then Brendan Fraser, or you're on the ride, and then the screen pops up, and Brendan Fraser's there with the Devil Lady, and they have some mundane, unfunny dialogue. And then you go up, and then they make some pun that's like, I wish my popularity would skyrocket, or I wish
I could fly.
I wish something would drop, or something like that. And then the elevator comes down, and I lost the plot. I think I lost it a little bit here. I lost my enthusiasm for this idea as I was saying it.
I just need to stop you.
Yes.
You have consistently said Fraser. It's Fraser.
Fraser? Okay.
My
bad. I think
you should apologize.
What if we work Frasier into the ride starring Brendan Fraser?
Let's expand to every sitcom ever that takes place in an apartment.
Let's just expand it to
the
everything.
Sitcom drop ride.
Friends, here's what happens. You watch an episode of Friends as you go up the elevator, and then Ross cuts the cable because Ross is the biggest.
Ross has had enough.
He
wants Monica to himself.
I was going to say.
All right. Rob, did you have any other ones you wanted to...
I mean, besides, I like the sitcom idea. Let's throw in Seinfeld, and then it doesn't actually drop. It just slowly goes down, but there's like a conversation about, like takeout food.
Oh, yeah.
I told you, Terry, we're going to fall down this elevator shaft. Oh, George, you're falling, flip-flopping. We're falling, whatever. That was the worst Seinfeld impression.
I was going to say... with Seinfeld,
Kramer opens the door and just falls down the shaft.
You have to reference if you're gonna do Seinfeld, you have to reference the things people know. So you have to have Festivus and the Soup Nazi, and they have to be there.
No soup for you.
That should be that. Well, that would. Do you know what? That's the exit area. Is the Soup Nazi's kitchen?
Oh my god!
You can't call him the Soup Nazi, but the Soup Fascist. We'll call him the Soup Fascist. This is a bad episode. I agree. No, we're cutting this whole episode. Sorry,
no. This is all staying in.
Oh, wonderful.
What if it's life imitating art and you just do David S. Pumpkins Tower of Terror?
Yes. Can we talk about Thousand Floors of Frights?
Sure.
I can't believe none of us wrote that. Maybe you wrote that down, Rob. I didn't write that down. I would die. If out of nowhere I'm on that ride, the doors open and David S. Pumpkins is there,
and then it
would be
drops.
the greatest moment of my life, because it's like canon that he arrives in an elevator. Did anyone watch the cartoon? Because that thing, he arrives in an elevator. That whole sketch was Tower of Terror, which was amazing. And then we get that ridiculous nonsense. I absolutely want that. I'm sorry. Now that's all I can think about.
And the most important part, that gift shop, you can sell the suit, the wig. You could get a photo of you turned into David S. Pumpkins. You're going to make millions, Disney.
I was going to say Disney then like enforces a partnership with Spirit Halloween to get that suit. And they don't even have to change anything. They don't have to make it higher quality. They can still sell it and just shoot the price up. Because
isn't that what they did? Oh, that's the joke. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say because you're buying the suit at Disney World.
Oh yeah, so it's even more.
It's even more. I mean, the actual suit. I don't know if they shot the price. If Spirit Halloween shot the price up later, but
well, let me add on to that now, because we just Rob opened a whole can of worms. Because I mean, how we ended up with a Tonight Show Jimmy Fallon themed attraction begs the question: could this David Pumpkins ride be a Saturday Night Live ride with all those characters you love from SNL? Like, sorry, that's the joke. I can't. Well, no, there's tons of characters, but do they belong on a Tower of Terror ride?
I think that's.
Do we need to see Jimmy Fallon going ew in women's clothes while you're on a motion simulator? Sorry, let's not rag on Jimmy Fallon.
Oh no!
As much as I'd love to,
let's do. I was distracted a little bit there because I was looking at our bookshelf to see the numerous movies and things, because we've gone off the rails at this point.
Yeah.
The elevator has dropped and it's not coming back up.
Are you going to say Lovecraft?
No, I was not going to say Lovecraft. I was going to say Doctor Who Godzilla. What else do we have here? Kolchak the Night Stalker. Everyone's favorite series, Kolchak the Night Stalker. Kolchak the Night Stalker was a show from the 70s that I thoroughly enjoy. Similarly, an anthology, horror-themed, supernatural-type show to the Twilight Zone, but a little later and very different. Kolchak is an investigative journalist, and he goes around. You know what, Tyler, I'm going to go on this tangent about Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Just go on. I'm making faces.
Okay.
No one can see my face anyways.
They can hear it. They can hear it so well. We have Welcome to Night Vale. That's pretty close to Twilight Zone. We've got a bunch of Shakespeare books.
We have a Dr. Seuss book. Are we going to make it Dr. Seuss's Tower of Terror?
Why not? Why not?
Wait a second. How did I forget about this? People have mentioned this idea. I can't believe I forgot about this. They're about to own this for real. Die Hard. They're gonna own Fox.
My goodness.
You have the tower from Die Hard. You get a Bruce Willis animatronic. And you make a Die Hard ride.
I thought you were gonna say something about Dr. Seuss, and I was gonna be like, "What?
How could you possibly have something prepared for that?"
I don't know if it'd be very kid friendly, but at this point, I've long abandoned that.
Those kids have had their chance at Disney World. It's our turn.
What's like the Showtime version of his catchphrase where it's like no swear words?
Yippee-ki-yay?
Hippie by day. Something. It was something.
I think it's still yippee-ki-yay, but he probably doesn't say. I can't say it on this podcast.
I think it was hippie by day, motherforker.
Motherforker?
Or something like that. I think that was actually in a crack.
Mr. Falcon. Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon.
Mr. Falcon, oh.
A Falcon ride. Marvel's Falcon!
Oh, there you go.
No, that would be what replaces Soren. The ride vehicle is you're sitting on top of the Falcon's back, but let's not go there because we're getting into Epcot.
Okay.
I think we're losing everything.
Let me transition.
Yes.
I think we've talked extensively enough about what we'd throw in or shoehorn into this existing ride vehicle and system and building. Let's go for broke. What would you do if you could get rid of this entire attraction? What would be in its place?
Okay.
And you know what? Let's expand that to even all of Sunset Boulevard. Because if the theming is going to be broken by taking out Tower of Terror, we may as well also see what we can do by taking out that entire area as well.
Okay, well, because I was going to say, I would keep the Twilight Zone, but I would turn it into a dark ride because I love dark rides, and I would just make it like an episode of the Twilight Zone with some impressive animatronic effects and such, and
like some kind of omni-mover,
or maybe a trackless ride that has a few motion simulatory moments, but all in all is kind of a tamer ride. But that's me being boring. That's who I am as a person.
If that whole area, based on the ridiculous rumors I've been hearing, if that whole area is going to become Pixar, I would love the Door Factory coaster, or even like some kind of Monsters Inc. themed ride. I mean, we could even take that back a bit. It could still be like a gantry lift or something inside Monsters Inc., but I would love some kind of ride through the Door Factory. And I know that like the rumor right now is that that's what Rock and Roller Coaster is going to be, because that show building is so big and so kind of in the way that if you were going to keep that ride, it would have to be themed. And unlike Universal, who just themes it to be a box on the outside, make it the Monsters Inc. building, or put that at the end of that street. Just make that Monstropolis. It's already a street.
Yeah.
There's only a few cosmetic changes you'd really need to do to some of those buildings, but to have a big giant Monsters Inc. building in the background there with maybe a new ride system, or maybe some kind of suspended ride vehicle to act like you're riding on the rails of the doors would be awesome.
That would be so much fun. I was thinking about Monsters Inc. I was gonna say the lazy version of what I would want to do, because I'm selfish and I'm on the East Coast, is I would love to see like a Radiator Springs brought over. I know it's not original, but like I just love Radiator Springs over in California Adventure. What about this? Movies, it's never gonna happen because the movie's never gonna get the sequel it deserves. But what if Tron Land gets put there? You have your light bike roller coaster where Rock and Roller Coaster is. You have not necessarily a drop ride, but maybe some sort of thrill ride with a trackless vehicle that represents the games they play with the Disc Wars. You have a restaurant that is that club from the sequel, or like a bar. And then the idea is at night, everything is lit up and neon, and it's like you're on the grid. But during the day, it's made to look like NCOM and Flynn's Arcade and like everything in the real world.
You know what?
Why even wait till night? Throw that sucker in a giant show building. That entire area. Because the whole idea is that there's no day and night there. It's sort of just this deep, dark area with all these lines and neon grid. Like, throw up a projection on the ceiling and have sort of all those weird buildings, and you could walk right on the grid, and it's like this glossy floor. Well, that's never going to stay glossy forever. But have that indoors. So maybe even just keep Flynn's Arcade as the entryway, and you let groups of people walk through, like a portal or something. Maybe Flynn built a portal to make it easier. Or Flynn's son, Sam, built a portal to make it easier to transport in and out, instead of just having one person go in and out of there. But
I was going to say Cillian Murphy. His whole 2 minutes in that movie that ruined it for me. But anyways, he was the reason I went to see that movie. But anyways.
Sorry.
That's okay. I don't remember where I was going to go with this. I feel like that's a bit of a large area to devote entirely to one theme, because when you talk about that and say put that all in one building, I immediately think of that Sony park that's going up in Dubai.
Oh, you mean Motion Gate, where there's like indoor
and they have
Train to Dragon Land,
and then they also have like the Shrek Swamp and things like that. The area's too large, I think. Although,
we could just make it as small as we want.
I guess that's true. It doesn't have to completely overtake the entirety of that sort of Hollywood Boulevard and area. I'm still stumped, honestly. I kind of want to preserve the old Hollywood, because we're already losing the Great Movie Ride, and we're already losing well, we're not losing, but we're getting Star Wars Land and is it Toy Story Land in Hollywood Studios? Yeah, those two things that don't feel very movie-ish, except for the fact that they are movies. Or kind of about movies. So something that harkens back to that time would be nice, I think.
I have your answer.
Do you?
Make it Disney Studios sort of themed. And put that Night on Bald Mountain coaster that has been talked about forever, put that at the end so that it fits in thematically with Fantasmic right next door.
That's actually not a bad idea.
And then every other area, like you have sort of those buildings that kind of resemble like old shops or old Hollywood like theaters. Like make that like first of all, put your Mickey Minnie Runaway Railway ride there instead. Where there used to be that animation courtyard, but also you could put so many like classic rides there, like Donald's Boat, and it's just one of those weird rides that move up and down the track and spin around. I forget what those ride vehicles are called, but like a whole Disney Classics area would be a wonderful place to make your old Hollywood, because you could theme it to Walt.
This is true.
I've just been imagining that the weenie of when you walk down Sunset Boulevard and you see the mountain with a giant Chernobog on top of it at night, especially when you have like lightning going off and stuff. That'd be so cool.
Throw another mountain into that park. I mean, no mountain exists, but like in terms of like Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, where they all have mountains.
Do you think they'd be able to like make a way for the? I know, obviously, if it's like a giant Chernobog, it would be impossible to make it move. But do you think they could like create the illusion of movement with like projections and stuff? Where it's like Chernobog looks asleep during the day, but then at some point in the night they do a projection where he like comes to life, like he does in the.
Oh yeah, you could totally do that. You blast some fog out of the side of him, and then you project wings onto that. That's totally feasible.
Yeah.
Make the wings open up when it goes from day to night.
You know what? I like that.
Ooh. Plays the music and everything.
Yeah.
Make a show out of it.
It's
you know?
light that actually like
and
gets him to go back to sleep, sort of thing.
And then we can also have like boring Disney museums for people like me around that area. I mean, you can have the other things there, but I would love to have a small museum about. Well, I guess we have that already with the Walt Disney Presents, but maybe larger, maybe a little more in depth. And then you can also have the old rides that used to be around, little scale models of those. That'd be fun.
You mentioning that made me think of what if they took Rock and Roller Coaster and turned it into One Man's Dream, but kept it as a roller coaster. And it's like the first ever museum roller coaster experience.
One man's
and it's just like you have to learn about Walt's entire life in 90 seconds.
Nice.
The pre-show room starts out the same, but then it's like, well, we gotta go, but we'll get you a limo and we'll continue the movie.
I was going to say they replace all of with Walt Disney. It's just like 5 different versions of Walt Disney.
5 monologues about from Disneyland the show or something.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh look, there he is in Missouri. Oh, now he's in Kansas. Oh look, now he's back in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Oh, it's over.
It's over.
We gotta
He's dead.
Future Tyler, please edit the next part of this to be the sounds of a very fast roller coaster and people screaming with just this audio of One Man's Dream, because that would be amazing. And go.
There should be something deal, some kind of amusement enterprise deal where the parents and the children could have fun together. So that's how Disneyland started.
And we're done. That was great.
All right.
Didn't we learn a lot about Walt Disney? Well, if we tear down that ride and put in another ride, but keep Sunset Boulevard, let me tell you, what do you do? The Great Muppet Ride. That ride that never got built and was never even put into that area because Jim Henson died, which was pretty much just going to be the Great Movie Ride, but with, like, Muppet characters. Drop that on that opposite side of Hollywood Boulevard, because then you could make it any show building you want. Mm-hmm. And I think I talked about this before in our last Hollywood Studios episode. It should be the Hollywood sign, like the mountain that has the Hollywood sign on it. Because you could put something around that area, you could put a dark ride in that area, and it still acts as sort of that symbol of Hollywood that still exists, but also used to exist. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to take it that far, yeah, I would just move Muppet Vision into where Beauty and the Beast is right now, because that show also hasn't changed in like 30 years. And I want something new in that theater, or I want that theater gone because it takes up a lot of real estate as well. So I would love to see something more Muppet-themed.
And then if Disney buys land in Morocco and builds a Hollywood sign, then nobody can complain about the sight lines from Epcot, because it would all match up anyway.
There we go. I've suddenly had an idea. What about Big Hero 6? You could make the Hollywood area San Francisco.
Oh, that'd be great.
And then the ride itself is like the fight where like the microbots are like holding the elevator up and such, and as the fight progresses, the microbots fall and the elevator drops and things like that. Similar to Guardians, where exciting action happens and it sometimes affects you.
I mean, a flying coaster. If you build San Francisco just so that you can have a flying coaster around that area would be incredible.
Well, I was thinking keeping the basic framework of the Tower and Terror intact. Otherwise, you can just say, we're going to bulldoze all of Hollywood Studios and replace it with these areas. But anyways.
No, I'm just going to go to bed tonight sad that Tron Land will never really exist.
Rest in peace.
Eventually, I mean, the fact that ride got opened in Shanghai and somehow it's coming to the Magic Kingdom...
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, and I'm very confused if people actually want to see more Tron or if that was just some weird choice. But if the case is that people want more Tron, then, Rob, they're absolutely going to bring some more over somehow.
I was going to say,
I hope so.
A few film buffs excluded, the pull of Tron is the visuals. Like, it doesn't matter if people know Tron or not. The incredible bright neon visuals and such are enough to get by on something like that.
I say it's 50% they're planning to bring back the films when they need to like deal with Star Wars fatigue in the box office.
Oh yeah, that's
probably true. And it's 50% like worried scrambling when they had plans for like a Tomorrowland refurb, and then Tomorrowland the movie bombed, and they're like, we need something there, throw something there, Tron coaster, go.
That is upsetting, because I really liked that movie actually. Tom
me
hated
too.
it, so never mind.
I didn't hate it. I just didn't find it.
You don't like Casey.
I don't like any of the characters except for Cillian Murphy.
What? We're talking about Tomorrowland.
Oh, Tomorrowland. I'm sorry. I thought we were still talking about Tron. My bad. I didn't hate Tomorrowland. I just didn't entirely agree with the way it told its message. Anyways, we're not going to get into Tomorrowland.
Well, I think we've talked way longer than we thought we were going to about Tower of Terror and the Hollywood Tower Hotel. I don't know what's going to happen to us now. I mean, that only took about like an hour or so. I don't know how we're going to get out of here.
Tyler? Tom? Where'd you guys go? Did they leave? I can kind of hear you. Wait. Forrest Whitaker? No, this is all wrong. I'm supposed to be getting out of here. I don't want to watch this again.
Oh, jeez, Oh, we're back in the hotel. Oh, I just had this crazy dream that we were stuck in the fifth dimension with Rob from RobPlays. Oh, you know what? I was watching it on my computer before I fell asleep.
That explains everything. I had the same dream. I must have fallen asleep as well. Well, let's sign off, Tyler Mann.
Yeah, thanks for listening to Ride Rehab. Remember to follow us at Ride Rehab on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We have a new YouTube channel where you can listen to all the episodes on YouTube if you so choose, and we're going to have more videos like fun content in the future. And also be sure to check out our store at riderehab.com, where a lot of the fake theme park designs that we come up with are actually made as shirts and hats and other fun gear we'll have in the future. Thanks for listening to Ride Rehab. I'm Tyler Mann.
I'm Thomas Kiernan.
And I'm Rob Plays, and you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/RobPlaysThatGame. If anybody out there knows how to get me out of this fifth dimension, please, I would really appreciate it.
Did you hear that?
Like a couple of weeks now.
I thought I heard something weird. Thanks for watching. And do we have a sign off? Go watch Bedazzled.
Go watch Bedazzled.